Welcome back to Applying Yourself, a law school admissions podcast brought to you by the admissions team at Washington University School of Law in St. Louis. And my name is Naomi Stewart. I serve as one of the directors in the JD admissions office at WashU Law. And we have Anna, of course, with us today.
Hello, I'm also here, Anna Donovan. I'm the communications program manager here at WashU Law in the admissions office.
And today we are talking with current student 2L, Emily Grau, and we are so glad to have you with us today, Emily.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have Emily on today because she has a really amazing, exciting, fascinating, I think truly everyone who is interested in legal things would be interested to hear about what you did your 1L summer. But we're going to start this conversation jumping back a little bit. Emily, if you just want to tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and sort of what led you to law school.
Yeah, so I am from the suburbs of Chicago, from a little town called Oswego, which is close to Naperville, because no one's ever heard of Oswego. I grew up there. I did my undergrad at The Ohio State University. I got a degree in history and a minor in philosophy. After a gap year, I came to WashU for law school. I have pretty much always known that I wanted to be a lawyer. There was like a brief 6-month period in high school that I thought I maybe wanted to be a teacher. But then I pretty much instantly bounced right back to law, and I went into college wanting to go to law school. And so then once I graduated, it was a pretty natural step to go that way.
Fantastic.
And how did you come to choosing WashU Law?
Yeah, so my brother actually did his undergrad at WashU, and I was kind of looking through the law school rankings, as most prospective students do, and I kind of blanket applied, and I came here. I was touring. I think WashU is stunning. I've been to the campus a bunch of times before even applying to visit my brother. My brother loved his undergrad experience, and then honestly, when I was doing recruitment, I just felt so wanted by WashU. They were emailing, they were calling, they were so interested. We joked that my brother had my phone bugged because every time I would talk to WashU, he would call me right after and be like, "What's up today?" And he never calls me. So it ended up being the best financial decision for me, but it was also, my brother was here, so I had a built-in support system. I really liked the school. They were super supportive. And I just felt like I wanted to go back to Chicago, and this would give me a really good path to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's so awesome to hear. We're glad that you felt wanted, and hopefully you're enjoying your time, kind of firmly a little bit more than midway through.
A little over half.
A little over half through law school. That is so exciting. So tell us a little bit about how your 1L year went.
Yeah, so 1L is a really hard learning curve. I think pretty much everyone that's done law school feels that way. But I, on the first week of school, met my two best friends. We are still best friends. One of them moved into my building, actually. And we were just really close. And then throughout the year, we ended up building a really great friend group. And that's been great. The professors have all been super supportive. I haven't had any professors that I was like, oh. Sure. And my friends have been great. Support system has been great. But 1L, yeah, I think it was definitely hard. Academically,
Yes.
It was a challenge for sure, especially when you go to a top law school. Everyone was the top of their class, and now you're here, and not everyone can be the top now. Right. So I think that was a curve.
Yeah, and, we have to remind ourselves, in admissions, we're doing our job, admitting candidates that are going to be able to do the academic work, get great jobs, and feel successful, surrounded by, other high-achieving students as well. But, I think it's so great that we have you on because I know our 1Ls right now are in the depths of securing their 1L summer employment, and I think that's a lot of what we're here to talk about today. So you had an internship with the Missouri State Public Defender's Office. Do you want us to tell us a little bit about sort of how you got that position? What was the kind of the interest there? And I think for you a little bit of your interest generally in the public sector.
Yeah, so I really have always loved public interest. In college, I worked at Legal Aid over in Columbus, working on their bankruptcy program, which was great. And then during OCIs, which is on-campus interviews for people that don't know, I had already applied to the public defender, and then I took my dog to the dog park, And a border collie started hurting him, and the most friendly girl I've ever met in my life came over to talk to me. She turned out to be a 2L, not with 3L, named Casey. She was actually interning already at the public defender. She was, I'm here with all of the public defenders. Do you want to come meet them? 35 seconds after meeting me. So she took me over. I met all of them. They were wonderful just to talk to and hang out with at this dog park. And I actually had an interview already with them the next week. So I'd met them and I was like, I love these people. Like, I would love to spend 40 hours a week hanging out with them. And also, like, as someone who has interest, I'd never worked in anything criminal. And I was like, okay, it would be really interesting just to see what that looks like versus, you know, bankruptcy, legal aid.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of how I came to that.
Awesome. I think that's very St. Louis, that happening at the dog park and the people and kind of that,
Yes.
you know, kind of small town feel and you know, the people around. And I think, you know, Midwestern in general, just very welcoming and helpful in that respect,
And
which is
you
awesome.
did have a very interesting experience though at the Missouri State Public Defender's Office. Tell us a little bit about that and just, you know, the kind of work you found yourself doing and, you know, really credited to your passion as well. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so my first week, my attorney was sick, so I met him the second week. And he comes in and goes, yeah, so we're going to be working on, like, the biggest murder trial in St. Louis has seen in 20 years. Good luck. And I was like, excuse?
I'm sorry, what?
I was like, I just finished 1L. Like, what?
Am I qualified to be doing this?
And then my first assignment was to create a novel legal argument in the state of Missouri to keep cameras out of this murder trial, to keep them from, they wanted to, like, live stream it, essentially, which in at least Missouri State Court is usually allowed with proper petitioning and procedure. And we really did not want that because it was a very highly politicized case. So he was like, yeah, just like make something up. I was like, I've literally never written a motion before and you want me to come up with a novel legal argument?
Yeah.
Which I did. I ended up making like a Sixth Amendment fair trial argument about like filming and prejudice, which actually was accepted by the 22nd Judicial Circuit.
That is so
Congratulations.
impressive. That is incredible. Talk about like substantive legal work.
Yeah.
You are doing.
It's like week 2.
Yes.
Yeah, but so then I wrote a bunch of motions, went to a bunch of hearings. This was actually about the murder of David Dorn, which happened in the summer of 2020 during the riots that happened after the murder of George Floyd. And our client was who was accused of the murder. So obviously very charged, a lot going on. And I went to all the hearings. I spent about 4 hours a week with Stefan, who is the defendant. And that's kind of what I spent my summer doing, was writing these motions, doing discovery work up until the trial, which was in July, which I did go to.
Right. And from what we understand, it you know, maybe took a little bit of a turn, the resources that were needed for this and kind of your role in you know, securing resources, if that's a good characterization. But tell us a little bit more about the sort of the progression of how you played into this.
Yeah, so I started, and obviously everything was going straight up to the trial, which is kind of crunch time. I ended up actually, we joke, I got an intern. Her name's Anna Stewart. I love her to death. She was an undergrad. So they gave the intern an intern. And she would do the work that didn't require legal knowledge, you know, transcribing, timestamps, that type of thing. And her and I worked really closely together. And that was our team with Brian Hornier, who was the lead attorney, and then Adolfo Mink, who was second chair. And yeah, it's just the public defender does not have phenomenal resources. I think that that's widely known, and it was definitely, I got to be very hands-on. I was in all the meetings. My ideas were very heard. You know, everything I was saying, they were at least willing to hear it and explain if I was wrong, if it was something that I wasn't right on. But yeah, I was definitely I had to get in on that. At trial, I was taking all the notes, sitting, you know, at table, taking the notes, doing that type of thing. So very hands-on.
Absolutely. And I know part then of sort of your work and what you did was also reaching out to law firms as well. You would talk about that and how that kind of folded in.
Yeah, so at trial, he ended up being found guilty on all counts, which I felt very strongly was not justified. There was no DNA evidence, there was no fingerprints, there was no really forensic evidence other than like a co-defendant that flipped 2 weeks before trial. And a weird ID. And I really felt that, one, he was innocent, that he didn't do it, period, but also that they had not established beyond reasonable doubt in this trial that he had. So it went beyond just my feeling of innocence. It was that I don't even think the trial was correct. So post-trial, I had to wait until sentencing. And I decided that I was going to see if I could get a big law firm to pick this up pro bono, the appeal of this trial. And I ended up going down the vault list of all of the firms, major firms in Chicago, St. Louis, and Kansas City that were kind of in the region. I went to their pro bono pages to see, because they list the kind of pro bono they do. And the ones that listed criminal appeals went on this spreadsheet. And I ended up with about 50-ish firms that took direct criminal appeals. From there, I wrote out an email, like a form email that had fill in the blanks for the firm name, so it seemed a little more personalized.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I basically laid out, this is the case, these are the facts of the case, this is what I think is wrong with the case, this is why I think you should take the case. And I had, when I was making the spreadsheet, a lot of them have like their pro bono contacts.
Yeah.
So I just put those in the spreadsheet too. You know, I'd click. And I like made the like title caption of the email like high profile pro bono criminal appeal, just to like try and get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
As much
Eyeballs on it.
Yeah. I want them to be like, oh my God, who's this random person emailing me this? And I should have done it in batches, because I thought this was going to be like when you apply to big law jobs and you're supposed to just like spam everything. And so that's what I did. And I sent out about 150 emails probably to these 50 firms in about 48 hours,
Okay.
probably. I spent 2 days back to back because, like I said, it was fill in the blank. So like once you had done it, you got it.
Yeah.
And I penned it out, sent it out, and was like, okay, let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Expecting like maybe a response.
Sure.
And then everyone was so interested. The outpouring was just insane.
Wow.
I had 25 firms actually respond to me directly within a week. And there were 12 that wanted to meet with me about it, like having some type of info session, discuss. But even the firms that couldn't take it, I got so many emails from these attorneys that were like, hey, we can't take this for jurisdictional reasons. It's not whatever. But I am so moved by this case that I have forwarded it to everyone in my legal inbox to see if they want to take it. If you post, someone sent me like a database that this group of firms uses. And it's like, if you can get authorization to post it here, I will personally make sure it is top of the list and you will find someone. And even these attorneys that could not take it
Sure.
were working so hard with
wow.
me to
Yeah.
find someone who would.
Yeah, that is so impressive. Taking a little step back, after sentencing, is this something that you went to the public defenders and asked, like, how to proceed, or sort of like what you could do? Did you like inherently know I'm going to reach out to or sort of how did you make that next step?
Yeah, so I went to see Stefan in the jail about a week and a half after sentencing, and I was still really devastated, and he was devastated. And I promised him at the time, I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make this right. Like, I'm not giving up on you, and I want you to know that. Like, I'm here. And he was like, okay. And he had faith. I spent a lot of time with him. He was wonderful. And I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, I feel like a lot of the issues here, well, one, it's just a whole thing. But I was like, so I kind of knew to reach out. Like, I think that no one told me. I asked the public defender, because obviously, like, I'm disclosing legal information.
Yes.
And I was like, hey, can I do this? And they were like, yeah, I mean, like, go
It's your
ahead.
time. It's
Yeah.
yeah, right.
They're like, do whatever you want. But yeah, it was my idea. I very much kind of thought about it. I think I said something to Stefan, and I was like, well, and he was, he's like, why would you do that? And I was like, there's a reason O.J. Simpson isn't in jail and you are. And I was like, so let's reach out to firms and see what we can do. And they're actually, McGuire Woods, which is who took it, we can get to that. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
That's
But
okay.
they are going to be co-representing with the public defender. So it's all of the resources all together, and everyone can kind of work on
Working
that.
together.
Yeah, awesome. Do you want to, I guess, like, I hate to say speed, but like speed us through getting McGuire Woods on, and then like kind of bringing it together and where you guys are.
Yeah, so with McGuire Woods was my number one choice, actually. They have a project called the Appellate Justice Project, which is who took it. And they only do direct criminal appeals that have strong social justice ties, aka this case. And all of the attorneys that work on this project have prior criminal defense experience. So they've worked in criminal courts. They're not just, they don't, are all civil, which was great because obviously civil and criminal are so different.
Yeah.
So they reached out, asked for a meeting, which I was working at Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, and I was like booking their conference room to do all these meetings.
Yeah.
And this was the one actually, Anna, my intern,
Yep.
I was like, you should come to one of these just to see like what this type of advocacy looks like, and also just so you can see, like, you've been so involved in this, you should see this. So she comes, and I'm like, she's here. So they asked a bunch of questions. I had sent them our like motion for new trial, which has all the, you know, claims of error. And we were going through it, talking. It was great. It was Greg DeBuff and John Harmon were on the call with us, and we hung up. And I FaceTimed Anna immediately after. I was like, okay, do you have any like criticisms for me? Like, what do you think? So her and I were talking. 12 minutes later, my phone starts ringing, and it is a Virginia area code, which is where this project is based out of. And Greg had called my personal phone, and he was like, I just want to let you know, we're going to take this case. And I wanted to be the first one to tell you personally that we're going to do this. Anna's still on on my computer.
Yeah.
So she's like hearing
Hearing
all
the
of this.
conversation.
And I was like,
In
this
real
is
time.
perfect that Anna gets to be
Yeah.
in on this. But that was kind of how McGuire Woods came to it. And they were one of my meetings. So, like I said, they just responded, and he was like, this seems really well to fit our program. And I was like, it does. And that's why I was so excited that you
Yeah.
responded. So Greg is like the most accomplished human being I've ever met in my life. Like, I think his pinky is more competent than like me as a person.
You sound very confident.
Yes.
Josh, so
Thank
you. Should
you.
give yourself
Incredible.
a lot of credit.
A lot of credit.
But he was like top of his class at like Harvard and Yale. He was Defender of the Year in the military. He did JAG. He's a Marine veteran of 6 years. And he recently took one of his pro bono cases through this program to the Supreme Court of the United States.
That is impressive.
So I am very, very confident in Greg being absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. The biggest question on my mind is, how did you fit all this in with your work and schoolwork and all these other things? You know, it is, you know, you are a full-time student. How did that, you know, kind of work itself in, and where did you find the time?
Yeah, I think I just made time. I definitely did not have the time. But I felt very strongly about this injustice, and I'm someone that, like, when I feel like something is wrong, I can't sit on it. Like, I have to push through that. So I just I made it work. Like, I was up a lot of nights. Like I said, I was renting out the conference room at my job and like going between like doing legal services stuff, going upstairs, doing these info meetings, coming back down. I mean, like, so I just kind of pushed in. I think I've done like 65 pro bono hours on it in the last 6 months, which is kind of just, you know, you push, you just make it happen. Once the interviews were over, it came down significantly.
Yeah.
So that was helpful, but definitely I did part of it over fall break, which I think helped too.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, I mean, a credit certainly to your passion for, you know, helping in this case, certainly. And so this summer you are doing going a bit of a different direction, but not so different. I think this is a good example of how big law can work on public interest cases. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming summer.
Yeah, so I will be at Reed Smith in Chicago as a summer associate this summer. And that's in big law, obviously. It's not at the public defender or public interest. And definitely, I'll say when I was doing my like CIs or any type of big law interviewing, they were all really interested in this case. They all really wanted to talk about it, and they loved the litigation experience I got through it and that I had this experience already. But my kind of tie into big law is that when I was doing firms, I was screening for pro bono programs. I wanted to see who had good pro bono programs, who allowed you to take cases where you weren't just given, 5 things that you could pick from. Right. And when I was interviewing with Reed Smith, my first interviewer and my screener said, oh, well, I represent our local greyhound rescue because I love greyhounds and I rescue greyhounds. So I do the legal work for that. And I was like, that's awesome. Amazing that you have the autonomy to do that. And so I looked even deeper into their program, and I was like, I love the pro bono program at Reed Smith, and it would allow me to continue with my passions. So that's kind of how I'm going to work my passion into my big law career.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's extremely inspirational, for prospective students we talk to who, don't really know what they want to do, can get experience with both, but also having this passion for public service. and the different areas and capacities that you can get that experience, work with different, organizations, etc., which is so awesome. We may wrap our convo up there, but we try to end our podcast on like a takeaway. And I know we talked about this, a little bit ago, but you have some very good advice for future law students or current law students. If you'd like to kind of wrap it up for us and give some advice to law students, prospective law students.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like the first kind of part of the two-prong is like justice ends when you allow it to end. Like if you feel something's unjust, you can try. Like they might say no, but at least you know in your heart that you did your best. But I think the other part of that is like you don't have to be exceptional to make change. I'm not in the top third of my law school class. I'm still here. I've done this and I'm on a podcast now. Like,
yes.
I think that like not having perfect grades should not be a deterrent for you to think that one, you can't get the job you want. You can't do the things you want. You can't make change. Like that's up to you. Put yourself in that position, take the time, and like maybe you have to do pro bono hours when you probably should be studying. But
and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think that is something that like people should definitely take away.
Yeah. That is so fantastic.
That is just a great bit of advice and just so helpful for students as they're framing their experience and really, thinking about the jobs that they want to pursue and the pressures of law school.
Right. And like the passion that brought them to law school in the first place and
Absolutely.
like continuing that through academic summers and onwards. So
Absolutely.
thank you for being on our podcast.
Yes.
This was so wonderful.
Yeah, so
Thank
Emily,
you for having me.
Yeah, Emily Grau, 2L at WashU Law in St. Louis. We are certainly, very proud of the work and the passion that you are putting into your work. And it is just so great to have a wonderful WashU Law community and a community of attorneys, all over the Midwest and all over the country. It's just a wonderful profession that is very supportive. And so this is a great example of that. Thank you so much for your time today, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take
All
good care.
right, bye.